Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello, and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and this is the podcast where we interview experts from around the world on such subjects as presentation skills, visibility, leadership, and communication challenges. Before we go into the interview, I'd like to invite you to see how your presentation skills are going by taking our free 4-minute quiz at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can find out where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps a little bit of support could get you the results you need and the recognition that you deserve. This is actually important today because my guest is Lee Caraher of Double Forte PR firm, and she is going to talk to us about how to be a resource for the media. How do you get on TV? How do you get quoted in the newspaper? How do you have reporters know about you so that you're the one they call? Lee has a lot to say about that, and there's a lot of jam-packed full of information, our conversation. Her official bio is Lee Caraher is the founder and CEO of Double Forte, which is a national independent public relations and strategic communication agency. She's headquartered in San Francisco with offices in New York and Eau Claire, Wisconsin. As an acclaimed communications strategist, Lee is known for her practical solutions to big problems. Her company works with some of the top consumer lifestyle, digital life, and wine brands in the country at many stages, from startups to mid-cap, public, private, and B Corp companies. Lee has a reputation for building cohesive, high-producing teams who get a lot done well and have fun at the same time. She's a straight talker who doesn't hold too many punches, although she does her best to be pleasant about it. Her big laugh and her sense of humor have gotten her out of a lot of trouble. I particularly like this part. She's a graduate of Carleton College with a degree in medieval history, which she finds useful every day. Lee lives in Western Wisconsin. She splits her time between San Francisco, New York, and Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And she's really fun. She's interesting. She's got a lot to say. Stay tuned now for our very full interview with Lee Caraher. Lee Caraher, I finally got you onto Speakers Who Get Results. Welcome.
Welcome to me. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I've been following you for some time, and I've heard you a couple of times, and I thought I've got to get her onto my podcast. And we have tried several times, so it's finally mattering. And that's cool because this gets to be part of Presentation Skills Month, and right. Your information is absolutely what I want my listeners to have access to. Awesome. Before we get to asking you about how to become a media expert. Mm-hmm. Even TV. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about your dream interview. Right. If you were to interview someone from history, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
Okay. So I'll just preface it with the fact, sorry, I looked away there. I'll just preface it with the fact that I have a degree of medieval history, which frankly, this is the first period of my career that it's been useful because I did my thesis on the impact of the Black Death on England. So when people talk about the plague, I actually have something relevant to share about COVID. But Catherine of Siena would be my dream interview. I did several studies of her, and she lived in smack dab in the middle of the 14th century. She was in the Dominican order, and she lived in Italy. And she had tremendous influence. Often we think about women in the church, particularly the Catholic Church, of not having influence on world order, on anything. And that is not true. And she went into the church very young, against the will of her parents. Pope Gregory, I'm going to say it's the 11th, used her as an envoy in different wars, in different battles, and different skirmishes between different parts of Italy. And she had tremendous influence, not just in the peace of Italy, but also in the Catholic Church throughout Europe. And again, it's all sort of against her parents' wishes in a very obviously a patriarchal structure. So I would want to interview her as we think about, we met through, I think, How Women Lead. You and I met about getting women to, really understand their power, step into their power, not have imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. And here's a woman who did it in the 14th century. And I would just love to talk to her. So, and who should listen? Everybody should listen, because I'm not a Catholic. I'm actually Episcopalian, but she had, but no, regardless of your faith or not, she's an inspiration in terms, not just as a woman, as a feminist in an anti-feminist organization, but as just a woman who just didn't let anything stop her.
Well, let me ask you a little bit more about that, because I think a lot about historical cycles. It's what allows me to sleep at night. You were talking about your knowledge of the Black Death and what it happened to the English society. I think when I look at the horrible things that human beings do to each other nowadays, I like to look back into history and see where we've been here before. It's always a cycle.
We have been here a million times before. Yes. And somehow we survived. That's the thing. When I look at the things people are saying or the messages that are coming around again, and I think, well, there is also the history of getting past these issues. Yeah. So, and there's instances where not getting past these issues, or you don't get past the issues through a lot of bloodshed. Anyway, back to Catherine of Siena. Did she become a saint? Yeah,
she's made a saint. She's made a saint. And was she, in her lifetime, I'm guessing her family had some power, or they wouldn't have listened to her if she was just a farmer's daughter, right?
Correct. Well, she's also a Dominican, and she rose up in her house.
And was it through her writing? Was it through her writing that
she was actually writing. She had an incredible influence on Italian literature for 14th to 15th century. And you have to remember that Italy was the center of culture. Has been the center of Western culture for a long, long, long time. But in the 14th century, coming out of the Black Death, absolutely.
Okay, well, cool. I'm going to come to that lecture. Maybe you and I should have another conversation.
That up, I think. Oh my gosh.
Maybe you and I should have another conversation, and we should just sort of geek out on the history details. I love that part.
Thinking about history, though, I just want to say one thing. People say, "Oh, this is the worst time in history. This is the worst time in history," and it's not. We are not. We are living through it, so it sucks. But in general, we are not dying of horrible deaths. Mm-hmm. In general, we are not, meaning, from fetid water, and not having pain relief, and not having clean water, and yes, we need a lot more of those things. But sanitation, all the things. So in general, we are in a better place. And All there is war everywhere all the time. We just, as Western, I'm in the United States right now, we may not see it all the time. Like right now, we think of the worst war actually is Russia and Ukraine. Actually, the worst war happening right now is in Ethiopia. More people have died in Ethiopia over the last 2 years than will ever die in Russia and Ukraine unless they go nuclear. So, but we get over it. And in general, we're in a better place. But living through it with our higher expectations is it's anachronistic to think of it that this is the worst because we're just living through it.
I think actually that's a very good point, is the expectations, the things that did not, were not able to happen, that everybody, the things we thought were going to happen when 2 years ago, we're recording this in March of 2022. And I've been checking in with things 2 years ago where I thought, okay, we'll be on hold for 3 or 4 weeks. And then everything's going back to normal. I really believe that. I didn't think it was going to last this long. So
also, like in our lifetime, women couldn't have their own checking accounts if they were married. They couldn't have their own bank accounts. They couldn't have credit cards. The fact that the little girl who went through, who was the lone soldier going into a white school, she is still alive. So things are better. It's just we want them to be even better.
Okay, good. So in order to make them better, since you as a PR expert and I as a presentation skills expert, we do a lot around helping people get their messages out to the world.
Absolutely.
And I could talk a lot about how to speak, but how the heck do you become one of the experts on TV? One of the experts who's quoted in the media? That's something that's a nut I have not cracked, something I have not actually approached yet.
I don't think you've tried it, because if you had tried it, you have cracked that nut.
I haven't really tried, mostly because I'm scared, frankly.
And a lot of people are scared of it, right?
I don't know.
Particularly women.
I don't know my way around. It's an area I don't know my way around. So I really wanted to get you on here because one of the joys of being a podcast host is I can invite people who know a whole lot more about a subject than I do and learn from them. So I'm asking you the questions I want to know, because if I ever get my act together, I'm going to get out there. Yeah, I will get out there.
You have the technology. You have the power. You will.
I might just have to hire you to sort of kick me in the rear end.
We can help you do that, but you can do it, but without us. But we're very happy to help you if you want to. So
yes,
but we met through a presentation series I was doing to help women specifically learn how to do it themselves, because it's just daunting. It's not impossible. And once you get the groove, you're in there. So.
Yeah, you just have to make sure that, as with anything else worth doing, you have to take the time to do it the first couple of times.
Exactly. And it takes a while, right? It's a big, you have to push the boulder up the hill, and then you get there like, oh, it's not so bad up here. And it gets easier once you've done it a few times.
Okay. There are some scary statistics about how few women are the experts who are called on.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean,
sure.
Why it's still such a minority?
So right now, here in 2022, it's actually gotten a little worse in the last 2 years, as so many women have left the workforce, and senior women and, experts. However, about 70% of the people quoted in the media are men. And that leaves 30% for women. And of course, the workforce is actually tilted toward the woman, not towards the man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the front page, we used to call it the above the fold. If everyone's reading a newspaper, above the fold is when they deliver it to your house. If you actually get a newspaper, it's on what you look at first.
Yes.
But it's the first 2 scrolls on a website. It's the first 10 minutes of a television show. It's what you read first in an article. About 90% of the people who are quoted in that first that get their attention moment are men. Mm-hmm. And if you're a woman of color, I mean, it's even more
harder.
Oh my gosh. And in the sciences, it's very, it is although there are more women going into science, in the sciences, men are quoted even more drastically more often than women are. And so when we think about the role of media in our culture, either our work culture or our home culture or politics, whatever, the media has an incredible role in deciding who's important. Because, you can always see, if you go to a website to buy glasses, as seen on TV or as seen in the New York Times or right? It gives you so much third-party validation because media do not have to use you. You're not paying you can pay for it, but what I'm talking about is earned media when you're not paying for the placement, right? And earned media has more influence than anything in terms of building someone's credibility. So agendas are being set, right? By who speaks to the media. Oh, so-and-so said this is true. Well, I don't know, so-and-so right, But the media doesn't have to, they're supposed to get two sides of the coin, but it doesn't mean they have to get a man and a woman. And it doesn't really mean they have to get two sides of the coin. And ever since cable news came, it's all decimated that's the sanctity of having two sides on every topic. So when you think about what happens in your industry, about who should get paid what, and what should be the rules about culture, and what should be the rules about what you wear to work. I mean, you Google it, what should I wear to work? And what comes up first are news articles now, right? That's current world, right? So, and then when you read the news article, it's this expert got quoted and this expert got quoted. I was just reading an article today in the Wall Street Journal about workplace attire, right? And people are coming back to the workplace, and it's a free for all, and a lot of companies don't like it. And so it was all about this one person talking about how he's become the wardrobe police at his office. So now I guarantee you that article is flying around Wall Street.
Yes. Yeah.
Saying, here's what the new standard is because this guy said so, right?
And how did they find this guy?
So basically there is, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to put the article up, but the person who wrote the article, I think it's a he. This person, actually, I will tell you if it's a he or not. It's actually a woman. And I see who she is. So she talks about Wall Street culture. She talks about fashion as well. And so it's on her beat, things that she cares about. So she's always fishing around. Reporters are always fishing around for stories that will actually land in the paper. A reporter doesn't just get to decide, I'm going to write about greeting cards. They don't get to decide, right? Yeah. They come up with an idea, and then they go to their editor, and the editor says, yeah, but make sure you have, Joe in there, or make sure you have, I really want to actually, instead of doing Wall Street, why don't you do Midtown? Because Midtown's so much different than So it's a collaborative process.
And we're talking about, for our international listeners, we're talking about New York, the difference London, between Midtown, New York, or Main Street, or, the Village Square. Yeah,
exactly. Right. So they'll decide so Wall Street Journal, they write it from the Wall Street perspective. So they're always going to choose Wall Street. So that's a collapse. So she's fishing around for an idea for a story. Oh, here's a good idea. And then she goes fishing through the people she knows, like, I'm going to write a story about this because Banana Republic launched a new line of casual workwear that has a hoodie underneath a jacket. And Amazon has promoting right now work appropriate yoga pants. Is this real? She's finding out if it's real or not. She writes a story because she could see what's being sold at retail. And then she basically calls around and goes, who has an issue on this? And it doesn't take very long. Once you have, there are several different resources, which I'm going to, I can share with your listeners, where you can just put here's my query. And you send it out to all the PR people in the world, literally. Right. And you go, oh, I have a person who can talk about that. Or maybe she knows him from before, or maybe he he might have sent her an email and said, you know what the biggest problem I'm having right now, based on all this, is, I've become the wardrobe police. Yeah. And that's a hook, right? That's an wardrobe police. What do you mean? What's your real job? Kind of thing. So he may have pitched her. She may have looked at the trends on retail, on workwear. She may, going back to work, March was the biggest going back to work month so far since COVID shut us down 2 years ago. So maybe her editor said, okay, we're going to write 10 stories about going back to work. What's going on? You don't really necessarily know where it came from. The point is to be ready with something you think is relevant when a story idea comes up.
So let me ask you there. I talk a lot on this podcast about having your stories ready, your polished stories.
Yep.
You did a wonderful image, which we will put in the show notes, is about what a one sheet would look like that lists the areas of expertise and the industries, which is not what I normally do when I'm talking about speaking. I just say I do this, this, and this, and here's what the audience would do. But actually, a one sheet for the media. Talk about that a little bit. A one sheet, which is a speaker profile.
Basically, it's instead of a speaker profile, we call it an expert sheet. An expert sheet. Okay, it's the same kind of thing. But let me go back up one level. So one level is saying, I need to, you are an expert. The first problem people have is saying, yeah, I'm an expert. Yeah. And women have a harder time with this as men. This is documented. We know that women don't apply for jobs unless they can tick all the 10 different requirements. And then men will tick 3 and say, hey, I can do that job. So we know this, right? There's a lot of data on this.
We are socialized that way as children. Yes.
Right. So
nobody's fault. It's just the way.
If you're a senior vice president and you see another senior vice president or a vice president, whatever, you know your stuff, and you see a different person quoted in the media, and you go, I could do that. Or why are they talking to them? Why aren't they talking to me? First, I want you to question why they're not talking to you. If you have the same kind of role, a lot of women go, yeah, they're the expert.
We need to hear that again.
So if you're reading an article about a topic that you are well-versed in and have an opinion on, and you see who's quoted, the first question I want you to ask is, why didn't they call me? I'm an expert in this. Why didn't they call me?
Very good point. Yes.
Okay. Because there had to be a phone call or an email somewhere, right? Why didn't they ask me? And a lot of the time they didn't ask you because you didn't put yourself in the position to be asked. Reporters are super busy. Reporters today, there are fewer of them and they have more jobs. Yes. Meaning they used to have, I'll get the photographer and then I'll get the sound guy and then I'll get this. Now reporters have to do it all. They get a photo, they take a video, they get the audio, they do it all. So there's not a lot of time, and they go to if they've got if they can get a good quote out of somebody, they'll go to that person over and over and over again, because the soundbite, what gets picked up in quotes in an article, is good, right? So I'll go over it. So the first thing I want you to do is say, why didn't they call me? They should call me. And know that you have something to offer, right? Know that you have something to offer. Yes. Often you might read something, and I said this in, I think, the first presentation that I was in with you, Elizabeth, was like, who's that guy? Who the heck is he?
Yeah. Right. Well, or actually, a lot of people come to me for training because they have sat in a conference or a webinar or something, and they've sat there and they thought, I am twice as smart as this person. Why isn't that me up there?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all about who puts themselves in that position. And it also can be about what company you work for. So those two things matter. Okay. What's your position and what's the company you work for? Who do you represent? Okay. Because, you're always, people who work for Twitter, Amazon, Facebook, they have an easy time getting speaking engagements at conferences because people want to know what the leaders in each category do. Right. So if you work for a company that is up against Amazon, or you work for a company that's up against
XYZ Twitter, bread company,
whatever it is, or the bread company I use.
I love the bread company.
How do you you need to make sure that the reporter or the speaker, where you want to be on the conference, understands how you are juxtaposed. So if you're going to talk to Facebook, you need to talk to us too, because you need a big, a David and Goliath, right?
Yes.
Because that's what makes stories interesting. So the first question is, why don't they call me? And the next question is, all right, I want to be called.
Good.
Say it out loud. I want you all just to say it out loud with me. I want to be called.
I want to be called. Yes.
And then what do you need to do? So the expert sheet it's a one sheet that sometimes you just have to cut and paste and put it in your email, or maybe if you have a PR team, like if you work in a big company, go to your PR team and say, you should be using me as a spokesperson on these topics. And here's what I can talk about, and just serve it up to them. But basically the expert sheet is, who am I, with an interesting bio, not a boring bio.
Right.
And we can share like how you make an interesting bio. Because most bios, when you read they read like a resume, like blah, blah, blah. You have to make it interesting and use great words like, noted expert on.
Yes. Okay.
Your mother notes you. It's fine. It's good. Yeah. And then what are you expert in? So for my expert sheet, I'm an expert on crisis communication, social media, strategic marketing. I've written 2 books on building positive work cultures, intergenerational work teams, personal branding, and working women. That's the things I want to talk about. That's where I have a lot of credibility. And the industries that I've worked in: video games, food and bev, consumer lifestyle, nonprofit, and board management. So if you are a reporter looking, to today, Skippy has to do a recall on
Skippy peanut butter we're talking about.
Skippy peanut butter. They have a foreign object, a piece of steel, has been found in several of their
They're jars of peanut butter.
So they're recalling. They have to do a recall. They're recalling about 200,000 jars of peanut butter. So crisis communication. So I've already been called twice today about what should you do if you have to do a recall, because crisis communications and food, right there.
Okay.
So and then you have to also put in, how do people reach you?
Yes.
Your email, your phone number, your website, your LinkedIn, and your Twitter. And you must have a Twitter address. So I know a lot of women, particularly women, don't want to be on Twitter. You don't have to engage in the trolling and the crap on Twitter. But the more you're on Twitter, the better easier you'll be found by reporters, because every reporter has a Twitter handle, because they are required, they get compensated. They rise up themselves when they build their own brand as a journalist, and Twitter's the easiest way to do it.
Right.
So just a one sheet that says, here's who I am, interesting, what I'm an expert in, what industries can I talk about, and here's how you find me.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
Okay, good.
Okay.
And a good picture.
And you could also make this as a Google Doc, and just here's my link to my expert sheet if you need it, and just pull some things out.
So do you actually call it an expert sheet? I like that.
I call it an expert sheet because
it gets the word expert out there.
It puts the word expert up front.
Yep.
And reporters only want to talk to experts.
Right.
What I'd like to talk to is a newbie. No. I mean, they might want to talk to a newbie, but if you talk to a newbie in a business, you're always going to talk to an expert too. Yes. Someone higher up in the chain.
Right.
Always.
So how do we, and then say it's a radio or TV interview.
Okay.
It's maybe maximum 3 minutes.
Right.
How do you figure out what to talk to?
Right.
How do you keep it under 3 minutes?
So the first piece is, okay, so you're an expert in those things, but you're going to decide what is your point of view on a few things. So if you work for a company and you're announcing a product, or you're in the middle of a controversy or whatever, right? What is relevant, right? First, you're going to decide what is relevant right now. So this expert sheet is sort of, that I just described, is evergreen, sort of like, right? But if you're always working in a moment in time where something's relevant and timely. So particularly on television, it's going to be relevant and timely because, it's hard to get.
It's all about
something that's not irrelevant. That is irrelevant and it doesn't matter about time.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Right. So what's relevant and timely? So if you're if you think about the people who've been thrust into the television and radio media and print and online in the last 2 years, so many doctors who, look into this, they're over here and they go, it's really bad. And, they don't have any
and they have no screen presence whatsoever. Exactly.
You never see them again. You never see those people again. They find somebody new. Yeah. So, what is relevant about right now? It could just be in your industry. It could be only 3 publications that would ever matter. But these are, if 3 publications matter, it is industry worthy, right? It is setting some agenda.
And here's the thing is that when you have been quoted in the media, you're become somebody within your company. Correct. To be recognized. That helps your career. Absolutely. And it prepares you for the next career. That helps you get the speaking gigs within your industry. Things like that.
It builds your credit. It builds your gravitas. It builds your, it's a calling card. Like when you think about if you're going to go, if you're at a certain level and you want to go somewhere else, the more you are findable as an expert in the industry, not just in your company, the more options you will have and the more in everything, title, compensation, where you live, the whole thing.
All of that. So just continuing with reporters, for instance, you had a wonderful list of do's and don'ts for an interview. Let's talk about that.
Oh my gosh.
And there were a lot of them, I know.
There are a lot of them.
Or
right?
Like the top things not to do and the top 3 things to do, maybe.
Right. Well, let's start with what not to do. Don't lie ever. Don't lie.
Don't
ever.
lie. You will always get caught.
If you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know the answer. I'll get back to you.
Okay. Yep.
Feel comfortable. Just because you're an expert doesn't mean you need to know everything.
Okay.
Period. So, and then know who you're talking to. So don't go in blind. Don't go in like, I have no idea who's calling me in 10 minutes. So you want to know who's talking to you.
Right.
I mean, do they have an agenda? What kind of publication are they from? What kind of television show are they from? Because that will tell you a lot. Do they work for Fox or do they work for MSNBC? That's going to tell you a lot about who's going to call you, right?
And for them, it's all about who their listeners are.
Right.
So who are you talking to, and who are their listeners?
Like, who do they have to satisfy? Right.
Right.
That's the whole piece. Right. And then the other piece is really avoid talking in negative quotes. So instead of saying no or bashing somebody else, if the more you can not, although there is a lot of drama, there's a lot of performative interviews that go on. Once you start doing that, you will never not do that.
You'll always be the person who's bashing. You'll
always be the basher. And although it is unfortunate.
And that's not good for women either. Because
I was just about to say that. Yeah. Women who bash, men who bash get away with it much easier than women who bash.
It's a cultural bias.
All of the misogynistic labels come out.
Yep.
She's a B. She's aggressive. No. But, you just don't play into it, right? So be positive. Be focus on yourself, not anybody else, right? Yeah. And then be prepared. Like you're going to go in and say, I'm talking to Joe. Joe's going to ask, we're talking about X. What could be sensitive? What's controversial? Nothing really. What could he ask me about? And if you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out for you.
What if they're coming in planning to trap you?
If they're coming in planning to trap you, what you decide if you want to do it or not. There's nothing that says you have to go to an interview.
Right. Okay.
Was not available for comment, did not respond to the email. Someone decided they weren't going to show up because they didn't see a win, right? Not all media interviews are wins. The vast majority in business, the vast majority of interviews, not the things we see on, CNN, not the things we see in political news or that kind of stuff, but the vast majority of media are not about what's happening, with COVID or what's happening, in the Ukraine. Mm-hmm. They're about industry. They're about trade. They're about what's going on. How do you deal with right now? The biggest thing you could talk about right now is how do you deal with supply chain and how do you deal with talent? Those two things are the biggest thing across the board. If you have a point of view on talent or supply chain that impacts a business and an industry, you got something to say. Are you solving it? How are you solving it? What'd you do instead? What'd you use instead? How are you keeping people? What was the problem? How'd you solve it? That's the vast majority of media, not necessarily what you do when you turn on the television and watch the news.
Okay, that's
right.
That's very helpful. So if you're positioning yourself as a resource, are there any particular questions we should watch out for? Or when the reporter says, "So tell me about yourself," and it's because they haven't done their homework. I get that in podcasts as a podcast guest a lot.
Print, if we're talking about print, if we're talking about television, it's different because it's live or you may not know how they're going to edit it. But if it's just an interview over the phone or over, in person or even over Zoom that's not recorded to be used as video, don't waste time. When someone says, "Tell me about yourself," well, I live half the time in Austria and I live half the time in Seattle and I do this and I do that. No. Just start with, "I'm here to talk about X and this is why."
Yeah, right.
This is why.
Right. Yes.
Concise, and relevant. If they want to, so you asked me the question about like, who would you want to be talked to? And I gave you the relevance of like, I'm going to tell you who this person is. And this is why it's interesting, who the hell is that person? But why would I even think about her? Because I have this background, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and
if I did just say Captain of Siena, you'd be like, who the heck, what?
But a degree in medieval history,
right?
Having studied the Black Death,
right?
The effect of plague on a society, that definitely gives you things to talk about.
That gives you things to talk about, right? So like, my name is, I'm Lee Caraher. I'm here and I've been in this business for a long time. And really what I'm here to talk about today is, I'm very concerned about X, Y, or Z, or I'm very excited about A, B, or C. Or there's three things that are going on that no one seems to be talking about, but I really think you should. And here's an opportunity to talk about it. So just tee up your conversation.
Yeah, that's a great phrase. I don't hear people talking about this, and I think it's important.
Right. So tee up the conversation as opposed to I was born in, New Jersey and now I live in Wisconsin, whatever. Right.
Okay, Lee, I think I might have to just sit down and listen to you for several hours at a time, but I don't have that much of this. So where could somebody start? If they if they've already said, okay, I want to be called.
Right.
Where do you start?
So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to write that expert sheet. What are you an expert in? Can you provide interesting, relevant information that is actionable for the people who matter to you in your industry, in your community, whatever it is that you want to talk about? So write your expert sheet. Then I want you to, identify just five newspapers, news outlets, whatever it is, magazines, trade publications, whatever it is, where you think that you care about for what you want to talk about, right? So if you want to talk about, so in my business, if you want to talk about the evolution of public relations, it's PR Week, it's Ad Age, it's New York Times, Wall Street, it's very clear, right? Write those publications down. Just do five. Just five. No one ever just does five. They gave me 15, but just do five.
Just do five. Okay, right.
Five, and then identify the reporters at those publications. Focus on publications here, who write about your topic. So you go to the publication, and you search for your company, your competitors, your industry, and the topics that you are doing something on.
I love that.
And then you will identify in that publication who matters in that
Right.
publication. If you don't know what publications matter, do it from Google and just do it by topic and see who shows up on top in reporters under news. Like click over to news and see who shows up on top.
Okay.
So now you've written your
Yeah.
expertise. You've identified 5 publications and you've identified maybe up to 20 people amongst those 5 publications who might be good contacts for you and who would be people who would be interested in talking to you because you're an expert in the field that they have written about before.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Okay. Then the easiest thing to do if you don't have a piece of news, right, but you want to be used for commentary, is to go person by person and see what they've written about that's relevant to you in the last 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
So, Elizabeth, you've written 7 different stories about speaking and how speaking is changing so much and what happened during COVID in the last 8 months. And you've talked to these kinds of people. You just know who you're talking to, so that then you're going to write an email, and your subject head is going to say "expert available on this topic."
Mm-hmm.
Just put it right there in the subject line, because reporters keep their emails and they sort them. And then when they need an expert, they go into their email and they use the search bar, expert plus speaking.
Yes.
And then they see what shows up in their email first, because those people are already in their email. It's faster. They're looking for speed. So expert at X, ready, available for commentary or whatever, something like that. And then introduce yourself. Hello. Let's see. Hello, Lee. I'd be the reporter here. Hello, Lee. I've really enjoyed reading the last 4 articles about XYZ. I am an expert in ABC. Here's my current title, my job. And I thought you might be interested in sort of a different point of view on some things, right?
Yes. Right.
Regardless. And I'm very happy to talk to you about these things at your convenience, kind of thing.
Perfect.
Now, they're probably going to ignore you. Don't worry about it. But the fact that you know who the heck they are, you gave it to them in a way, and the subject line is so important, not just introduction or hi, none of that. No. Mm-hmm. Expert on X, available for commentary. Or if you have news, right? So if it's, we call it trend jacking. So if there was a piece of news, so if there was a gaffe, right? Someone did
the pieces of steel in the peanut butter jars.
Pieces of steel in a peanut jar. So you could say, deep experience in foreign object in food, available for commentary.
Uh-huh.
Right? So foreign object in food is what that is, when something that doesn't belong in the food item is in the food item.
Right.
That's called foreign object. And anyone covering this topic will know that that's what it's called. Mm-hmm. Or you could say recalls, kind of thing. Yeah. And we can talk about, and since I'm a communications person, I can talk about what's the process? What do you do to make sure everyone's safe? How do you regain trust in a consumer who has now purchased something that they have to return to the store? All those kinds of things. What should a store do if I'm talking to a trade retail publication? What should a store do? How do you prepare the people at the grocery store to receive 200,000 jars of peanut butter back? So so the introduction email is like not a timely thing. It's a very specific thing that is targeted from you to that one reporter based on what they've read. This is why it takes so long. This is why people hire agencies like ours, because it is a lot of work.
Yeah, if you think
you can't do it, you can't. That's why I asked you to only find 5, just 5, because if you can start with 5, then you can build. Or if it's timely, right? This foreign object thing shows up, and you this is when you've already identified the 5 publications. You decide, who is going to be the most useful at all those 5 who might write about this topic, and you write it in. Expert in the topic, for me, foreign object in food, available for commentary.
Okay.
And then you put a little thing in there. The same thing. This is who I am. Hi. I know you've spoken about this in the past. I see this issue around the peanut butter recall. I have experience. I actually do have experience in 2 peanut butter recalls. And here's who I am, and here's my company, and here's what I could talk about if you're interested. Happy to be of help. And just send it out. If they don't respond, do not get offended. Okay. It is a long process. So in our world, sometimes we like announce new products. And this just happened last week to one of my team members. We'd announced a product last October, and the publication we really wanted, which is real simple, they emailed back last week, 6 months later.
And
but they found us because it's going to be spring. The flavor is spring-like, and they know us because we talked to them a lot. And they just searched. In our. I know. I talked to somebody. Oh, there it is. There's the email. Hey, can you send me some of that?
Okay.
6 months later.
That's Lee. It's such a delight to have you on this podcast. Thank you so much. So much useful news. I'm going to put some of this information in the show notes. And in the meantime, go look her up, Lee Caraher. We'll put that information in the show notes too. Very useful. And I would echo what you were saying about it taking time. So hire an agency or hire someone to help, because when I think about how long it would take me to do something and what I charge per hour.
Yeah, it's not worth your time.
It makes so much more sense to pay someone to do it for me.
Right. Yeah. It will elevate you. But you just need to know when you're doing this work of public relations, media relations, that's what I'm talking about. Media relations. It is a long tail process. Yeah. And there's a lot of work that goes in to this. And that's why when you're doing it yourself, you got to limit. So that you can actually do something, because it's overwhelming. If you do hire a firm, you can hire a firm just to get you started. Yeah. We have a program that's called Get on the Map that does all this stuff, right? Here's your message, here's your story, here's your stuff. But other agencies do this too. And then they tell you how to do it, right? Yeah. Or they can do it for you. That's why big agent companies or even small companies hire people like us, agencies like us, because it's a lot of work. It's incredibly high touch. There's not very much automation in our work. Yeah, because it's so individual. It's all about relationships. It's and the person changes. Like, so many people have lost their jobs, have turned into freelancers. But you can do this. Just please hear me. One, you have something to say. Just say that you have something to say. Just say it out loud. Mm-hmm. And two, you can do it one publication at a time or one reporter at a time. But it's a long tail. And once you're mentioned, of course, you can always remind everybody that you've mentioned, then once you want to amplify the crap out of that. Leverage that like crazy on Twitter. Yes. But truly, once you're mentioned once and then twice, you will find out you'll be asked more. Yes. Because reporters, A, can find you. Uh-huh. And B, they know you're willing to have a conversation. The worst thing for a reporter, investigative reporters, they'll dig deep for months and months and months to find, deep throat. But most reporters aren't doing that. And it's all about time. Yeah. That's right. Lee, thank you so very much for being a guest on Speakers Who Get Results. So sorry. I'm really thrilled. Yes. It's great to have you. Everybody, pay attention to this. If you've been listening, go back and just check the show notes. We've got all this sorts of information about Lee. And thank you. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. And let me remind you that if you're curious about your presentation skills and where you're strong, especially if you're ready to get mentioned in the media, you can take our free 4-minute quiz at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can find out where you are strong in your presentation skills and where perhaps a little bit of support could get you the recognition you need, the results you need, and the recognition you deserve. Thank you very much, Lee Caraher. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for having me.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.